Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to log in and join us on screen as part of our webinar today. I'm Abby Ingber, for those of you who I haven't met yet. I am the Executive Director of the National Education Alliance for Borderline Personality Disorder, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to a special screening of Borderline, followed by a question and answer with the creator, Kelsey Packwood. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Andrea Gold, who is moderating today's webinar. Andrea Gold is a DBT therapist who is also on the board of the National Education Alliance for Borderline Personality Disorder. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Abby. I am delighted to be here for my first screening with NEA BPD, and we're here with the star, the director, the writer, the creator, and star of the new pilot, Borderline, Kelsey Packwood. Kelsey just released the pilot digitally on Thanksgiving Day, just recently, and we're honored to have all of you joining us live to watch this screening and then have a chat with Kelsey afterwards. Welcome, Kelsey.
Yes.
So,
Hi.
Kelsey, one thing you said when you introduced the pilot was that one of your goals was to get an accurate portrayal of borderline. And I think so much of what's talked about and shown as borderline in the media misses the mark. A lot of films, a lot of depictions show things that are called borderline and that aren't and leave out what is. And so I want to start by asking you, what motivated you for this pilot? And specifically, what were the gaps about what we know and understand about BPD and misconceptions that you were trying to address?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say is that I knew nothing about BPD before I made this. I had BPD my whole life and I knew nothing about it. I could tell you every single symptom I had, which was all nine of the criteria, but I didn't know what that meant and why it was so challenging for me to navigate my relationships, to get the motivation to get out of bed, to go to school, to hang out with people. I was slowly isolating myself and also just turning away from relationships. And I knew there had to be a reason why. I knew that it couldn't be for nothing. I knew that it couldn't just be because I'm a difficult person. I thought that there had to have been something going on in my brain, considering that I had gone through a lot in my life when I was a child, and that I know that it came from somewhere. So that was the beginning, was that there was something that was going on with me. I was determined to figure it out. And then when I found out what it was, I couldn't believe that when I heard the words and read the words borderline personality disorder for the first time, I didn't know what that meant. So every single day since then, I've done my research. I've read books. I've talked to therapists and doctors. I've, reached out to my community and tried to educate everybody that I know so that they can have a better understanding. And then because I lived in Los Angeles and I was an actor and transitioning into being a writer, I thought, let me write a script. Let me see what I can do. And then I said, let me make this script. Let me write it so that it's as cheap as possible. I'll make it so that it's one location. It takes place in, or like, well, one main location and takes place over one day. And let me see if I can shoot something that I can afford to shoot. And I did. And then I just didn't let go of the directing piece. So I ended up being the director and I produced it all. I made it all happen. And that was because it needed to exist. I think that you're right. There's so many misrepresentations. The word borderline is used, but it's not necessarily accurately portraying borderline personality disorder at all. So I felt very, very determined, and I feel like I've landed somewhere that, is a good place to start, but it's not where we're going to finish. Hopefully, if this is a pilot presentation, right? So hopefully we get a full series. So again, if you can share this video and if you can rewatch and follow on TikTok and Instagram, it'll be very helpful to get this message out there so that we can move forward and have a full series that educates.
Well, on that note, how do we help get this series be made? What do you need and what can people do?
Viewership. I really think that it's just about numbers at this point in Hollywood. They're not greenlighting anything where you can't prove that you have millions of viewers, which to me, I mean, if they say there's 160 million people with borderline personality disorder, which I think it's much more than that, then that's the same number, like around the same number as people who tune into the Super Bowl. So come on, you guys. Where is the 160 million people out there? Let's watch this and let's make it happen.
And the millions and millions of us who love people with BPD too.
Which makes it even wider of an audience, which makes our audience closer to 1 billion people, which
Yes.
I think that that means that this show deserves to exist. I see the hearts. Thank you guys.
So we need to make this a whole show. For today, we got a sneak peek. We got to see the pilot, and you focused on one day. You had to consolidate with the goal of accuracy, and you highlighted the experience of getting your diagnosis, the BPD diagnosis for the first time. I love how you're sharing with us this dialectic. Dialectic, of course, is that the D in DBT, the gold standard treatment for borderline, something I know that you're a fan of, Kelsey. And for people listening who may not be familiar with dialectics, we're talking about opposite things that can be true at the same time. So you share this dialectic of both not before that day from this therapist, not knowing what BPD was, not having any idea you have it, and then completely knowing and understanding it all too well, right? Knowing it
Yeah,
and not knowing it.
yeah, yeah.
So one thing I
I
want to, oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's just so true. I somehow did know so much, and it was easy for me to dive in, and instead of being intimidated by the diagnosis and the criteria, I was motivated at that point. Since I did have an understanding, I was like, yeah, that is me. Yeah, I have said those things. I've described myself this way. I didn't shy away from it, and I don't think it's anything to shy away from. I don't think that it's a shameful diagnosis. I think that I think it's a good prognosis diagnosis, considering that if you go through treatment, you're likely to recover if you go through the right treatment for the right amount of time. And therefore, this is not something that is going to destroy lives forever. This is something that actually can totally be treatable and helped. And I'm living proof.
So you shared getting the diagnosis was motivating for you. There's unfortunately lots of stigma about BPD. I appreciate, Kelsey, how your mission sounds like your value is to educate yourself and educate other people. There's still, even within mental health experts and communities a lot of concerns about giving the diagnosis and what that means. And I'm aware that in this pilot episode, two things happened on this day that you're sharing: getting the diagnosis and coming the closest you ever were to attempting suicide. And I'm wondering if you could speak to this link, which may look like a correlation to viewers. Were these related and how?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you're trying to jam pack borderline personality disorder into a 28-minute pilot, that's a very challenging thing to do. And I thought the easiest way to do that was to do a day in the life. I thought the easiest way to show what it really is like is somebody being abandoned over and over again. Obviously the circumstances are specific to my situation, and everyone else has different circumstances, so I can only speak to my own. But that diagnosis wasn't necessarily the thing that pushed me over the edge. Because again, it was something that was very helpful for me. And once I could put a name to it, I could get to work on how do I help myself. But I do believe that it was the abandonment. It was the feeling that, my family didn't understand and they were intimidated, and I I needed to get through to them. And so this pilot is a representation of, what I could do in 28 minutes. It didn't all happen that way. Some of it did, some of it didn't. But I I want to make that clear that to put it all together as quick as I could to get people to understand, because we have short attention spans nowadays. Uh, I made it a 24-hour day in the life story, but really I think the hardest part was that my dad and I had lost contact, and that when I got diagnosed, he really couldn't handle it. That was the thing that really made me feel like life wasn't worth living.
So it wasn't the diagnosis itself that increased your risk for suicide, it was the experience of abandonment.
Yeah, definitely for me.
So it's been about 4 years since the events that happened in the pilot. Let's talk about where you are now. What's been happening from then till now, and where are you?
Yeah, I mean, I made this thing, which I still can't quite believe, right? It's been a dream and an idea that started so long ago. And now we're here with NEA BPD, who I was hounding Abby with emails for a year. And then finally I had a pilot to show her. And now we've been able to partner with NEA BPD, which I'm so grateful. Thank you guys so much for having this event. The interesting thing about that time was when I was so low, when my dad kind of wasn't there anymore, and my mom and I had never been close, as you can see in the pilot. She really stepped up for me in that time, and I know that in DBT, there's the concept of phone coaching, and my mom, she has experience with coaching, and so I asked her. I said, "Could you give me 1 year where you pick up the phone when I call in crisis? I just need one person to show up for me in this time where I'm really panicking, so that I know that at the end of the day, I do have someone." And I know that's not a realistic thing for everybody to have. I know that not everybody has somebody that can answer the phone all the time. I'm very, very lucky that my mom gave me that and sacrificed her time and energy to really understand what was going on and to really show up for me, which changed my life. It definitely, it was the first time in my life that I had that, where I had somebody who was always there. Um, but I think that we should hear from some other people because I think that they'd have some good answers. So, Mom, Dad, where are you? Are you there? And
There they are.
decoy names, we're changing their names, their real names.
Hi,
This is
Kelsey.
my dad, my mom. Mom, this is Weta Duncan. If you want to change your name, Mom.
I'll change it now.
And then this is Jim Packwood. My parents are here to tell you guys a little bit of their perspective of this situation we have found ourselves in.
Welcome, Weta and Jim. Weta, let's start with you.
I'm so proud of my baby.
I have to record this.
And I did shed a couple of tears when the song came on. I definitely did, and to look at the suffering that you were going through, Kelsey. And you noticed during the pilot, Kelsey's texting away, and I remember that day when she started that group text, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
That was a real group text, that it was their first group chat because cell phones were invented later on in life after my mom and my dad, like my dad got custody, I moved away, I wasn't around my mom anymore. They had never been in a group chat before. So that was a real first time group chat.
Yeah,
That
That's
context is
true.
important.
yeah. And I remember how upset Kelsey was, and I didn't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Like she wanted me to like join her and like yelling at her dad or being upset with her dad. I was like, nope, I'm not going there, not going there.
Yeah. She
Because
did not want to do that. Yeah.
yeah, I did not want to do that because I think that one of the best things that happened to Kelsey was getting her diagnosis and
Mm.
to go through all that suffering and not knowing what to call it and not knowing how to face it. And I think, the blessing for me, and there's a point in the film that Kelsey says, "I surrender," and I'm a faithful person. I'm a believer. I'm a child of God, and I'm also a certified professional coach. So to be able to be grounded in those two things, my faith and my training as a professional coach, and then to be able to stand in the gap for her and to offer her that support, that unrelenting support that she needed was everything. And she talked about not being able to get out of bed, and before this, Kelsey didn't really have a faith because as she mentioned, she grew up with her dad. So I introduced her to my faith, and she said, well, I have nothing else to lose, I might as well, and I think that really helped her to develop strength and to tap into her values and to then get a focus and get energy to actually move forward.
Dad, what do you think?
What do I think? Oh, this was this diagnosis was it shined a light on something that was so painful and it was so pervasive in our lives. We had no idea why there were so many problems. We had no idea where this pain came from for you. So getting the diagnosis was amazing and was a blessing, and it answered all these questions about all the years of struggle and to see what you've created from it and how you've taken this adversity, this challenge in your life, and turned it into kind of your life's purpose to shine a light on this incredibly brutal disorder, and then also to try to remove the stigma from mental illness in general and borderline, and try to shine a light for everybody on what it means to live with a mental illness and get treatment and recover. And I'm so moved beyond words with what you've done, and that we can be sitting here having this conversation means the world to me. And of course, I'm so proud of you. And Rita, how about our daughter, huh?
I know. How about that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I keep telling Kelsey, this is why she was born. And this is, nothing is wasted, no pain is wasted. And I think it's in Romans 8:38, it says, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. Christ Jesus are called according to his purpose. And you mentioned that she has a purpose. This is her purpose. Her purpose is to bring healing to the world and to help free people from the shame of this diagnosis.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about diagnosis and are doing the best they can, and that we do the best we can with the information we have available at the time. And none of the three of you knew about borderline for all these years. And we know that borderline, of course, affected your whole family. And so I'm wondering if we could hear from each of you what you've learned and how that's been helpful. And let's start with you, Kelsey.
Yeah, I've learned to listen to myself, to not necessarily freak out if I don't fit in. There is a community out there that exists. I mean, who knew that there was a whole borderline community out there? But I mean, I've just I'm gonna be myself, and I'm gonna like myself, and I'm gonna let myself be myself, and I'm not gonna do anything else but that for the rest of my life.
Lita, what would you say has been helpful for you about learning the diagnosis specifically?
It helped us to understand that it removed the cloud or the fog, and that there was actually a mountain in front of us that we needed to climb, and that with the right tools that we can actually climb the mountain together. And I remember there were, Kelsey, you probably remember this day that you wouldn't get out of bed. I'm like, Kelsey, you need to get out of bed. You need to get something to eat. And she has this amazing dog, Freddie, and she refused to get out of bed. She refused to eat. And I said, you just need to start, and you just need to pray, and you need to talk to God. So for her to have a framework that, and we knew all of the nine, the main, because I know there are 256 different subsets of this disease, but to, you know, James Baldwin, one of my favorite writers, he said, not everything that you'll face will change, but nothing will change until it's faced. And if you don't know what you're dealing with, how are you going to deal with it? And I think Kelsey just put her finger on something. I watched her go from feeling worthless to feeling super worthy with my own eyes, watching her grow from this space of emptiness to fullness. So that's really important. So it's really important to have the diagnosis so that you know what to do with it.
Jim, how about you?
Well, for me, it was a revelation. I think, Kelsey, we started to see this present itself when you were about 5. and through our whole lives, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a very specific reason for all of this messy chaos. And so that was amazing to know that there was no doubt at all once we started looking into it and understanding what borderline is. There's no doubt that's what we were facing. And for me personally, it was the beginning of a spiritual quest. I started meditating. Me and my wife ended up going to India and spending 6 months studying with the monks at ACOM, the World Center for Enlightenment, studying states of consciousness and meditation and mindfulness, and digging into the literature and all of the books that my wife bought. And then Wida and I were lucky enough to get into Family Connections. And what a resource that is. It changed my perspective on borderline and gave me a lot of tools. But oh my gosh, if we had had that back in the day, if we had that information, I think that what's going on here right now, right in this presentation, is what's needed. We need to get all this information out to people and help them, help themselves, help their loved ones.
I have a question for you, Dad.
Yes.
How did you feel when we had that absence for those 3 years?
Um, I was absolutely heartbroken. And not only was I heartbroken, but I felt helpless and hopeless. I mean, you were suicidal. I had no answers. And I realized that what I was doing, my input was not, it was the opposite of helping. I was making things worse. I couldn't, I couldn't, um, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't be present. There was so much chaos going on. I was so scared. So it was heartbreaking. It was um, a really dark time in my life. Watching this episode and seeing what I missed, and you are a really great actor, and it was brutal, absolutely brutal. This disorder that we're dealing with is so cruel. It's so painful. It's so scary. And it's not so bad once you get the answers, once you know what to do, once you know how to communicate, once you know how to let some of the pressure off and turn the heat down and face it. So that's a hard question, and it's messy, but it was a really scary thing that we went through. And I know that tonight, hundreds of thousands of families are going through that scary situation. This is not something that happened just to us. This is really a universal thing. So, part of me, what you did with this challenge that you faced in your life, what you did with it was create something that has the potential to bring hope to millions of people, and I couldn't be prouder of you.
1 billion people and
Thank
counting.
you.
1 billion, Kelsey, one
I'm
billion.
convinced it's 1 billion people. I'm
I
just
love it. Yes.
What's clear from all three of you is you're not sugarcoating it. The pain, the suffering, the struggles there.
I don't think you can, Andrea. I don't think you can sugarcoat borderline. You can't even. It's not possible.
And you're conveying the pain, and you're also bringing a humor into the conversation, which I appreciate the range of emotions.
It's key. I don't think I could have gotten through it without some humor. I know some people say, like, how can this pilot be funny? Well, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here. I needed to laugh. I needed to find joy. I needed to feel happiness. So,
Yes. And I was thinking about this as Jim was talking, but it's been here throughout this whole conversation, the hope. So one question we got from the audience is, since your diagnosis, have you gotten help from NEA BPD? And Jim, you shared that you and Weta each were able to do the Family Connections program. In Family Connections, there's three main functions or goals: education, support, and skills. And Jim, you spoke to the tools. Let's start with you, Weta. Could you tell us about your experience doing Family Connections and how you experienced these three goals in your life?
Mhm. It was a blessing. Kelsey was the one that told us about it. I had no idea that it existed, and it was such a blessing to be there with Kiki and Megan. They were just fabulous facilitators. Um, and for me, because I have the training as a coach, I didn't necessarily learn anything new, but I could see how other people in the group really, drank in all that information. And one of my favorite moments, or my moments throughout the 8 weeks, was watching how Jim was soaking it in, and how he was really, you know, metamorphosizing in front of our faces, um, and why it's such an important community, and platform, is to be able to understand that everyone is in a different place. And I remember one of the last things I said, because you do get a chance to share, was about my faith and why it was important to have, to pray, and to have a higher power outside of yourself, that you and Kelsey now has that, thank God.
Yeah,
And
Marsha Linehan said the same thing in her memoir, that when she found faith and when she started building a relationship with God, that that's what transformed her life. So there's a
yeah,
lot of parallels in our lives as people with lived experience. It's very
yeah.
fascinating and incredible.
And in case anyone doesn't know, who's Marsha Linehan, Kelsey? Besides my personal hero, who is she?
She is the person who created dialectical behavior therapy, and she also suffered from BPD herself, which I don't think she found out until she had created DBT. She put two and two together, which is pretty phenomenal and incredible.
Mhm. Can I share one really quick thing? I remember Kelsey used to call me often when she's on her way to work. And at the end of the conversation, what would I usually say to you, Kelsey?
Leave room for the magic.
Yeah. So I coined this phrase that I would gift to her, because being diagnosed, and she said in the film that, I'm crazy. Being in very stressful environments can be very tough. And living in LA is a very tough place to live. And so it just compounds that sense of loneliness and isolation. So, so we had some moments, we had some scares, where, I had to call like the LAPD or the Beverly Hills PD to go do a wellness check on her. Um, but I was determined not to give up, because she's worthy. I love her, and that's my baby. I've always loved her.
Leave room for the magic. That to me, when I heard that, I thought of the ending of the pilot.
Mm.
It's in there.
Jim, let's
Yeah.
hear from you. Education, support, and skills. What did you take from NEA BPD's Family Connections?
Well, I tell you what, those three things are really important. I learned a lot about borderline that I didn't know. It was nuts for me when I saw the 9 criteria, and it was just like check, 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 check. My gosh. And then the skills of how to communicate, and the nuances of communication with somebody who's emotionally dysregulated, and the techniques of communication take a lot of practice. It's complicated stuff, but you can just see how effective it is to just to zero in on what's needed at that moment. And then as far as community, our group that we were, I think there's like 15 of us that were in this class. we're in touch, and we're setting up recurring meetings so we can continue to talk, and Kelsey, borderline is going to be with us for the rest of our lives, and I feel like the borderline community is part of my family now, and this is where we are. We're so lucky to be here. We're so lucky to have our daughter alive and thriving. And, anything that I can do to support the community, anything that I can do to support our daughter, I'm here.
Mhm.
Kelsey, what have you noticed different in your parents' behavior since they took the Family Connections class?
I think I mentioned that my mom and I had done a lot of that stuff that, you know, I think was learned in family connections. So I think that, you know, my mom and I have come a long way since my childhood. And we spent that year together really building it, and then every year since as well. And I hadn't talked to my dad in those years. And so I just reconnected with my dad a couple months ago after 3 years, maybe even close to 4 at this point. And um, it's the validation that I'm hearing now for the first time that he has a better grip on how to handle my dysregulation, even in moments where another thing to say is like it's a work in progress. If you have a bad day, it doesn't mean that you're moving backwards. But in little moments where I'm stressed or angry or this or that, he knows how to talk to me in ways that makes me feel heard and seen. And I know that he's really listened and learned. So that's what's changed.
Kelsey, a question that came in from our audience is what kept you here when you felt at your lowest with your dad?
I had to believe that this couldn't have been the end of my story. I couldn't take that as an answer. Um, I I was told I was too stubborn to let this thing kill me. And also, I literally, since I was a little girl, always thought I would have my own TV show.
Mm.
I literally always thought I'd be like on Disney Channel or something. So like if I don't get this show made, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But in all seriousness, no, I genuinely I I couldn't accept that I was gonna just not make it. I've been through too much, and I have too much to do. So I really just it was in the back of my head that thought like this can't be my story. This can't be my story. I'm going to change this no matter what. No matter what. And I've worked every single day since to do that.
Yeah. Jim, you spoke about validation as really learning that in family connections. Lita, for you, an audience member asked, "What was the new thing? What was a new thing you learned from family connections that was the most helpful?"
What was reinforced for me was why it was important to have self-care,
Mm,
because I'm a giver by nature. I will give you the clothes off of my back. And it's really important to take very good care of yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. The oxygen mask has to go on you first when you get on the airplane. And and my blood pressure has gone up over the years because when you're constantly absorbing someone else's pain, there you have to find a way to discharge it, right?
here's another dialectic, two opposites. Earlier, you and Kelsey spoke how you were there for her, picked up the phone every day. And I can imagine
Mhm.
people listening might be saying that's not realistic. And I'm
Mhm.
hearing you say how you're balancing that with the self care.
Yeah. And it sometimes it was 5 times a day. Sometimes it was more than that. And I just wanted to say something, because Jim mentioned that Kelsey was 5 years old when he started noticing it. Kelsey, you probably already know this. Relationships are so important. I got pregnant with Kelsey when I was on the pill. And I know this wasn't necessarily part of our discussion. And her dad and I agreed that she said in the thing, you should have had that abortion. We literally went to the clinic together that day, and I changed my mind, and he got pissed off. And the day we went to the clinic was March 4th, 1994. And Kelsey was born 10 weeks early at 3 pounds, 4 ounces. And I feel like that was God's way of saying, you see, you almost got rid of her on March 4th. She was born 3 pounds, 4 ounces. And,
Fine.
and so God has a sense of humor, you know. So going back to family connections and what I learned, yeah, you got to take care of yourself because you want to be able to stick around.
We had another question come in where somebody said that they're struggling to tell the people they're close to about, I'm assuming about having borderline. And I'm wondering if any of you want to speak to what you would say to somebody about having a conversation with parents, loved ones about having BPD and how you approach that and what might be helpful. Kelsey, would you start us off?
Yeah, I think I should answer this question since it's about.
Yes.
But I'd say just you know yourself best, right? You know your circumstances best, and you also know if people are ready and willing to hear information. I have a dialectical situation here where I told my mom and she leaned in. I told my dad and he leaned out. But it wasn't the only relationship where it was leaned out. There was other parts of my life where some friends really showed up for me and some people just really couldn't be there for me. And I think that in your heart and in your gut, you know who those people are. So I'd say I would be careful and take care of yourself because it's hard to face rejection, especially if someone doesn't really want to hear those words or isn't ready to hear them. But again, the goal that I have with this work is that this is going to be educational, where this is going to be words that people do understand, especially the people who don't know what BPD is and don't have it. Those are the people that I really want to teach. So give me like a couple years. We're going to have this like out there in the world. And I feel like I think it's going to be a lot easier when this topic is more widely discussed in the media
Not
and
just
destigmatized.
and not just in the media, but in the mental health community and mental health professionals.
100%. Yeah,
As a psychologist myself, I hear colleagues, I hear professionals say it's better not to give the diagnosis. I cannot imagine people saying that for other conditions.
I
And
know.
and I just thank you for your lived experience and perspective sharing how this has been helpful and not harmful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes.
I
Yeah.
will remember that to fight
Well,
this when I hear otherwise.
I know we're running out of time and I know that we have to announce the winners. So I um I think that the last thing that I want to say is that I couldn't have predicted that I would be here with all of you. Thank you, everybody in the audience. I mean, this is the largest audience I've had yet. So thank you guys for seeing the vision and for, supporting people in your life, for knowing what NEA-BPD is. I mean, I didn't know until I found out what I had. So, like, thank you, everybody. It means so much for me to be here alive and to be educating and to have my mom and my dad in the same Zoom room. I mean, like that blows my mind. And I'm open to all feedback. I really, really want to hear what people have to say. So you know where to find me. I have Instagram, I have TikTok. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be posting so much content, and I have so many videos. I have a lot of editing I have to do. So
Might we
please,
see Lita and Jim in some of these videos coming up?
I can assume that you would. I can assume that you could. Yeah.